all mashed up in my brain. But I am also the morning host on Classical 91.5, and for decades, I had the pleasure of working with Michael Lasser. We still, hear from listeners around the country who love his books, love his history, his storytelling, and we are so lucky to have him here in Brockport, thanks to a dedicated corps of volunteers and those who have donated to make these winter serenades possible. So please, thank you if you are one of those. You will be richly rewarded for coming out in the cold. First of all, it's nice and warm in here. Secondly, if you need to use the restroom, just go right up this ramp through here and hang a right. It's pretty obvious. It's a pretty small building. Please silence anything you have that might make noise in the middle of a song, whether it's a cell phone or an alarm that you might have going off accidentally. And let's get right into it. The joint is jumping indeed with Mike Lasser, Connie, Fredericks-Malone, Ruben, Tapp, and Alan Jones.
And you need not be depriving yourself of things to do.
Just get aboard the A train to take a little ride around the city.
Brooklyn or Broadway train, you see that old New York is mighty pretty.
Take your baby subway riding.
Yeah.
That's where romance may be hiding. Forget your car or airplane. You'll find that it'll pay to take the A train. I got my car. Just get aboard the A train to take a little ride around the city.
Brooklyn or Broadway train, you see that old New York is mighty pretty.
Take your baby subway riding.
Yeah.
That's where romance may be hiding. Forget your car or airplane. You'll find that it'll pay to take the A train.
Good afternoon and welcome. We are celebrating the centennial of the Harlem Renaissance. When did it begin? Your guess is as good as mine, except it was in the 1920s. You know, Leonardo da Vinci did not wake up on January 1st, 1500 and say, oh my God, it's the Italian Renaissance, I've got to get busy. You can't pin down something like that. But clearly, it flowers in the 20s. It continues to struggle through the Depression, and between the pressures of the Depression and the coming of war in Europe, it pretty much fizzles out by the end of the 1930s. It started as a literary movement. I don't know if you know that or not. There were enough black writers emerging, people like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston, who were claiming readership among whites, but also there was a growing educated middle class among African Americans. And so the premise was that they would read, both whites and blacks would read black authors. It spread, however. It soon encompassed classical music and art and dance and all of the so-called serious arts. But then something more raffish happened, and that's the Harlem Renaissance we're interested in today. Nightclubs and dives and joints where African American performers were at work, and whites from downtown would dress up, because people did in those days, and go to dinner and the theater, and then they would go uptown to Harlem. Some went in limousines, but most of us took the subway. You know what subway we took? The A train. The 8th Avenue subway took you up to 125th Street and Lenox Avenue, the heart of Harlem. That trip, I hesitate to call it a journey, it's a subway ride. That trip, Billy Strayhorn immortalized in Take the 8 Train. And when you came up from the train, you encountered the sights and sounds unique to Harlem, to Uptown. You found a celebration of black life in the nation's greatest city. But it wasn't easy. After fighting bravely in the trenches in World War I, African Americans returned home to find that things were even harder. Things were even less accepting than before. In the late teens and 20s, there were race riots and lynchings and closed doors everywhere. Beginning at the very beginning of the century, 1900 or so, immigration and migration, moving west, the migration west. Immigration, mainly after the Civil War, although the Irish came before, and then on the West Coast, the Chinese started coming in large numbers. Among the last to move in significant numbers were African Americans. The Great Migration starts around, again, there's no point, starts to become significant at the very, very beginning of the 20th century. They moved north. By the way, where they lived in the South shaped where they went. They traveled mostly by train because emancipation, the Civil War were over. If you lived in Florida, you went to New York, because that's where the train went. If you lived in Louisiana or Arkansas, where'd you go? Chicago. If you lived in Texas, where'd you go? Yell it out. California. Yeah. So you went where the train took you. And so the other thing that's happening, if this is the 1920s, Prohibition and all those black jazz musicians are suddenly out of work. So they're looking to find places where they can work. Where do they go? Harlem. Manhattan and Harlem. You know why? Prohibition was the law of the land everywhere, but you'd never know it in Manhattan. In the midst of the Depression, around the middle of the decade, would you like to guess how many speakeasies there were in Manhattan alone? About 20,000. This is not a drinking crowd. If you wanted a drink during Prohibition and you couldn't get it, that was on you. It was the most futile law we ever passed. And we made it a constitutional amendment in the bargain. So, the Great Migration, Prohibition, the emergence of the arts among African Americans, centered not only in a time, but in a place. Harlem, Uptown, West Side of Manhattan. And the Harlem Renaissance has arrived.
Tan Manhattan, where the South is North Central Park. Tan Manhattan, where the sun is brightest after dark. It's the center of 1,000 topics. You will think that you are in the tropics. Hang your hat in Town Manhattan. It's the magic town within a town. Red hot gals from Dixiana, senoritas from Havana, babies from the Philippines, cuties from the Argentines, graceful maids from Varentina, Trinidad and Puerto Rico, Panama and Martinique, every kind of tart you see. Topics. You will think that you are in the tropics. Hang your hat in Town Manhattan. It's the center of town within a town. Town Manhattan. You can be a swinging cat. It's the magic town within a town. Round out round.
You know, I'm sitting here drinking tea from a cup. You know that, I'm sure some of you do, that during Prohibition, people often sat drinking bootleg hooch from a teacup. Do you know that? Do you know why or where or how that happened? I do. When fancy hotels started serving hooch, they weren't going to put out liquor on their tables. They served it in their tea service. And so if you were staying at the Waldorf or the Drake or some such place, the Sherry Netherland, you would be able to get a drink. God knows where it came from. But you were able to get a drink, and it was served in the lovely tea service featured by that hotel. And so you could feel confident, for more reasons than one, that the gendarmerie would not arrive. We've traveled geographically. We took the A train to Tan Manhattan. We're in Harlem. But now we have to travel through time to get there. And that takes us back to 1905. In the early years of the 20th century, blacks were banned from Broadway. In the South, it was a matter of law. In the North, it was a matter of custom. Between 1910 and 1921, no African American had any connection to Broadway, anything from janitor to star, with one exception. He was one of the great stars of the day. I wonder if his name is still remembered. Bert Williams. If you're familiar with Bert Williams, please raise your hand. We got him. We got him. How many? Yeah? Okay. Okay, just a couple. You should know about Bert Williams. Problem is to listen to his recordings, you're listening to something from 1910 or 12, and you got to listen through the technology. He worked on Broadway, a great comedian during these early years. He got away with it because he was in the Ziegfeld Follies, and Ziegfeld had the clout to spurn popular intentions or attitudes. The thing about Williams, a black man in his time appearing for white audiences, upscale white audiences. Ziegfeld said that he aimed his shows, his follies, at the carriage trade. Williams had to be a kind of balancing act. He had to master this narrow space between seeming to know his place, because, my God, he dared not seem, what was the word? Do you know? Uppity. On one hand, and yet he wanted to mock his white audiences on the other. Because when he gave up appearing in all black shows for the Follies, he got some blowback from black people. You know, why are you doing all this for the white folks? And so the trick was to seem to accept the place of a black man and yet zing him at the same time. He was very good at that. In 1905, he introduced the first protest song ever heard on Broadway. It's called Nobody.
When life seems full of clouds and rain, and I am full of nothing and pain, who soothes my thumping, bumping brain? Nobody. When winter comes with snow and sleet, and me with hunger and cold feet, who says, here's 25 cents, go ahead and get something to eat? Nobody. I ain't never done nothing to nobody. I ain't never done nothing to nobody, no time. So until I get something from somebody sometime, I never do nothing for nobody, no time. When I was in that railroad wreck and thought I'd cashed in my last check, who took the engine off my neck? Nobody. One time when things were looking bright, I started to whittle on a stick one night. Who cried out, stop now, that's dynamite? Not a soul. I ain't never never done nothing to nobody. I ain't never done nothing to nobody, no time. So until I get something from somebody sometime, I'll never do nothing for nobody, no time.
What an extraordinary balance. The chorus, I ain't gonna do nothing for nobody, is defiant. But it's defiant in a context in which he describes reality, right? This happened to me, who helped me? Nobody. It's an indictment of the audience he's singing to. And yet at the same time, that audience would have found that song funny. Standards in humor change, obviously. Today, if you took the four letterisms out of comedy, you might end up with 15 minutes of silence and call it an act. I've nothing against profanity. I have a great deal against its being used badly. And so Williams has working this kind of magical balance that his audience adores. By the early 20s, whites in New York City had become fascinated by blacks and their music. Remember, we've got, by the 1920s, we've got ragtime, we've got jazz, and we've got the blues. And they are shaping American music. Blacks were seen as looser and more joyful than whites, more authentic. At the same time, Americans had discovered Freud and psychoanalysis. Blacks, they believed, were creatures of the id, and civilization was a shallow, narrow veneer. It was condescending, it was stereotypical, it was also transformational. In the 1920s, Duke Ellington led the house band at the Cotton Club up in Harlem, arguably the most famous nightclub in American history. He had started in Washington, D.C., leading a band, he was from D.C., a sweet band, a dance band. But then when he moved up to New York, he turned it into a jazz band and began to write a series of what he called mood pieces. This is the most famous of them, Mood Indigo.
You ain't been blue, no, no, no. You ain't been blue till you've had that mood indigo. That feeling goes stealing down to my shoes while I sit and sigh. Go long blues. Always get that mood indigo since my baby said goodbye. In the evening, when lights are low, I'm so lonesome I could cry. 'Cause there ain't nobody who cares about me. I'm just a soul who's bluer than blue can be. When I get that mood indigo, I could lay me down and die. You ain't been blue, no, no, no. You ain't been blue until you've had that mood indigo, that feeling goes stealing down to my shoes while I sit and sigh. Go
Most of the popular songs written between 1920 and 1950, even somewhat before then and somewhat after them, but we can encapsulate those years. It's come to be called the Great American Songbook. And the lines are messy. I mean, Irving Berlin wrote Alexander's Ragtime Band in 1911. It's part of the Great American Songbook. My Fair Lady is 1956. It's part of the Great American Songbook. You can easily make the case that Stephen Sondheim is part of the Great American Songbook. But mainly it's songs between the wars. And the vast majority of them are collaborations. There's a composer and there's a lyricist. Harold Arlen and Johnny Mercer, Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein, and so on. One of the greatest collaborations in all of American popular song emerged from the Harlem Renaissance. Composer Thomas Fats Waller and lyricist Andy Razaf. Now, Waller's famous. People still know his name. How many of you recognize the name Andy Razaf? I just made my point. You just made my point, actually. He was arguably the greatest black lyricist, and whether he was black, white, or striped, he's a major lyricist. It's a shame his name has been forgotten. Lyricists, we tend to forget the lyricist. How many of you can name me I'm not asking you to do it, just indicate. How many of you can name me a Gershwin song? Really? Only 2 of you? Really? A song? No, you can't, because there's no such thing as a Gershwin song. George wrote the music. I wrote the words. So if you want to sing a Gershwin song, you only get to hum, because there were no words. Waller was a composer, apparently bottomless font of melodies, but he was also a major jazz musician, and he was also a beloved showman. If you've never seen Fats Waller perform, you really should go to YouTube and watch him do it. Waller and Razaf wrote the next two songs for Harlem's Connie's Inn. Connie's Inn was almost as important as the Cotton Club. Most of the songs written for the reviews in these big nightclubs were written by whites. In fact, the most restrictive place of all was the Cotton Club. Everybody who worked there was black, from the janitor to the star to the band to whatever. The people in the audience, want to guess? All white. There would be no mixing of the races at the Cotton Club. Connie's Inn was not quite as restrictive. The songs, they did have some black songwriters. Among them, Waller and Razaf. And they were going to write a review for Connie's Inn. It was so successful that it was soon playing on Broadway. So in those years, in fact, I remember this. When you go to see a Broadway show, do you remember what time it opened? The curtain went up? 8 o'clock. Well, when I was younger than you are now, it started at 8:40. Shows began at 8:40. And so this show opened on Broadway at 8:40, and they did the whole show, all black cast. And then they trooped up to Harlem and did a midnight show at Connie's Inn. The show was known as Connie's Hot Chocolates. The names of all black shows usually gave it away in the title, but it was an all-black show. We're going from that show, there was a song you may or may not be familiar with called Black and Blue. Financing the show was a pathological murderer and mobster named Dutch Schultz. You may have heard of Mr. Schultz. And he went up to Razaf one day and said he had an idea for a number. It was a review, so it was a series of separate numbers. He had an idea that there would be a room that was all white. It was a bedroom. Walls were white, furnishings were white, sheets were white. And sitting on it was a black woman of dark complexion, which raises another whole set of issues. Colorism, skin tones among blacks, and blacks in their appeal and accessibility, acceptance by whites. At the Cotton Club, they used to use the craft paper test. You all know what craft paper is, that brown paper? The chorus girls needed to be lighter than craft paper to get hired. One of them, by the way, was a 16-year-old named Lena Horne. Her grandmother would accompany her and sit in the dressing room. By the way, the bathrooms at the Cotton Club were not available to the performers. They were only for the whites. He has this idea. There's going to be this woman, dark-skinned woman, sitting on a white mattress in a white room, bemoaning her fate because she can't get a man because all the men want them lighter. And Razaf says, "Oh, Mr. Schultz, I don't think I can write a song like that." Dutch Schultz pulled out a gun, held it to Razaf's head, and said, "You'll write it or you'll never write anything again." Razaf went back to Fats Waller It took some courage. He said, I'm not going to write that song. And Waller gave him this rather plaintive melody to set the lyric to. First, we're going to do another song from that same score that you will immediately recognize, Ain't Misbehavin', and then we're going to do Black and Blue.
No one to talk with, all by myself. No one to walk with, but I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving my love for you. I know for certain, the one I love, I'm through with flirting, it's you that I'm thinking of. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving my love for you. Like Jack Horner in the corner, don't go nowhere, what do I care? Your kisses are worth waiting for. Believe me, I don't stay out late, don't care to go. I'm home about 8, just me and my radio. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving my love for you. Jack Horner in the corner, don't go nowhere, what do I care? Your kisses are worth waiting for. Believe me, I don't stay out late, don't care to go. I'm home about 8, just me and my radio. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving my love for you. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving my love for you. Street, shuffling feet, couples passing 2 by 2. And here am I, left high and dry, black, 'cause I'm black, I'm blue. All the race fellas crave high yellows. Gentlemen prefer them light. Wish I could fade, can't make the grade. It looks like there's nothing but dark days inside. With a cold, empty bed, spring's hard as lead, pain in my head, and I feel like old Ned. What did I do to be so black and blue? No joy for me, no company. Even the mouse ran from my house all my life through. I've been so black and blue. I'm white, but it's inside. But that don't help my case, 'cause I can't hide just what is on my face. Oh, sad and forlorn, life's just a thorn. My heart is torn. Oh, why was I born? What did I do to be so black and blue? Just 'cause you're black, boys think you lack. They laugh at you and they scorn you too. What did I do to be so black and blue? When I draw near, they laugh and they sneer. I'm set aside, always denied, all my life through. I've been so black and blue. How would it end? Ain't got a boyfriend. My only sin lies in my skin. What did I do to be so black and blue? What did I do to be so black and blue?
You just got a treat in that the early recordings of the song, 1929, 78 RPM records, don't have enough room on them for the entire song. You just heard the entire song. When I decided that I wanted to do a show about the Harlem Renaissance, it did not take a lot of soul searching. Once I realized, my God, we're in the middle of this thing, let's do something, I set out to find singers. I've worked with Alan both as a singer and an accompanist since I was a very small boy. And he had a full head of curly hair. Alan and I have worked together for at least 25 years. But I needed to find some other singers. And I did. I found Connie, and I found Ruben, and we have been working on this program with this program, we have performed it for about 8 months, I guess. And it has a way of hitting audiences differently from anything else we do. Will you please acknowledge my friends, Connie Fredericks-Malone, Ruben J. Tapp, and Alan Jones. Thank you. James P. Johnson led a dance band. He wrote and arranged music for it and for other people as well. He wrote Broadway scores. He originated a new kind of piano jazz called stride and mentored the pupil who exceeded him, Fats Waller. And he also composed the first serious orchestral music by an African American. He was in his time referred to as the Black Gershwin because he wrote both popular and classical music, but he doesn't need any help from George. He can stand quite well on his own. In 1913, he was leading a dance band. He wrote a lot of the arrangements. They played for a group of longshoremen who would come up from the South to work in the port of New York because the pay was better. And they lived near one another, and they would gather every Saturday night for dancing. They called it a cotillion. Johnson got tired of playing the same arrangements week after week after week after week. And I assume the dancers got tired of hearing them week after week. And so Johnson wrote a series of instrumentals, about a dozen of them. He gave them all a kind of quirky rhythm to dance to. And then eventually the gig dried up and the band disbanded and so on. About 10 years later, in the mid-20s, Johnson is writing the music for a new Broadway score. Blacks have just begun to write Broadway scores. He needed something, and so he did what songwriters do. He went to his trunk. Now, when songwriters talk about the trunk, they don't mean a steamer trunk they mean a filing cabinet. But songs they don't use go into the trunk. And so Johnson went to his trunk and he pulled out one of these songs and he said, that'll do. And the lyricist for the show was an African American named Cecil Mack, who wrote some good songs along the way. He added the words, and it was introduced in the show called Runnin' Wild in 1923. This number, introduced by a wonderful performer, you can hear her on record, named Elizabeth Welch, created the greatest dance sensation in all of American music. Its popularity persisted for 1 year, and yet we're still doing it. Anyone want to venture the name of the town where those longshoremen came from? Charleston. James P. Johnson and Cecil Mack's The Charleston.
Charleston, made in Carolina.
Some dance, some prance, I'll say there's nothing finer than Charleston. Charleston, Lord, how you can shuffle. Every step you do leads to something new. Man, I'm telling you, it's a la-ba-loop buck dance. Wing dance will be a back number, but the Charleston, the new Charleston, that dance is surely a comer.
Sometime you'll dance in it one time. The dance called the Charleston, made in
Caroline.
Carolina, Carolina. Unless they got you on the map. With a new tune, the funny blue tune with a peculiar snap. You may not be able to buck and wing, foxtrot, two-step, or even swing. If you ain't got religion in your feet, you can do this prance and do it neat.
Charleston, Charleston, made in Carolina. Some dance, some prance, I'll say there's nothing finer than Charleston. Charleston, Lord, how you can shuffle. Every step you do leads to something new. Man, I'm telling you, it's a la-ba-loop buck dance. Wing dance
will be a back number, but the Charleston, the new Charleston, that dance is surely a comer. Sometime you'll dance in it one time. The dance called the Charleston Maid and Caroline.
So how many of you knew that African Americans, as part of the Harlem Renaissance, wrote the Charleston? Suddenly it has a place in history beyond its popularity. At the Cotton Club, back to the Cotton Club, white songwriters are writing the songs. And they hire a young white composer whose real name was Hyman Arluck. He grew up in Buffalo, the son of an Orthodox Jewish cantor, but he was drawn to jazz, and he changed his name for performance, and Hyman Arluck became, anyone know? Harold Arlen, one of the giants of American popular song. Moved to New York to sing, to become a singer, but stumbled into writing. I won't get into that, it'll take too long. And someone introduced him to a young lyricist named Ted Keeler, and they got hired by the Cotton Club. So we have one of the giants, still not a giant yet, but on his way because of some of the songs he wrote for the Cotton Club. And a lyricist who's mainly forgotten, Ted Keeler, and is an underestimated lyricist. He wrote some wonderful songs. You're going to hear one in a minute. One day, a friend of Arlen's is visiting. His name is Ralph Freed. He's a lyricist. He works mainly in Hollywood. He wrote this about Arlen. He was really one of them. He had absorbed so much from them, their idiom, their tonalities, their phrasings, their rhythms. Freed was right. For the 1932 review at the Cotton Club, Arlen and Keeler wrote a torch ballad. They intended it originally for Cab Calloway to sing. Fortunately, Cab Calloway and the owners of the Cotton Club could not reach contractual agreement, and Cab Calloway left. That turned out to be a blessing in a room where they know about such things. They gave it instead to the female star of that review, a major figure in American music. Her name was Ethel Waters. And to the day she died, she never forgave Lena Horne for taking it away from her. But you really should go to YouTube and listen to what it sounded like originally. It was one of the great torch ballads. Certainly the greatest single song to come out of the Harlem Renaissance. This is Arlen and Keeler's Stormy Weather.
Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky, stormy weather, since my man and I ain't together. Keeps raining all the time. Life is bare, gloom and misery everywhere, stormy weather. Just can't get my poor self together. I'm weary all the time, so weary all the time. Since he went away, the blues walked in and met me. If he stays away, oh, rocking chair's gonna get me. All I do is pray the Lord above will let me walk in the sun once more. Can't go on. Everything I have is gone. Stormy weather. Since my man and I ain't together, keeps raining all the time. Keeps raining all the time. I walk around heavy-hearted and sad. Night comes around and I'm still feeling bad. Rain pouring down, blinding every hope I have. This pittering, pattering, beating and spattering drives me mad. Love, 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 love. This mystery is just too much for me. Can't go on. All I have in life is gone. Stormy weather. Since my man and I ain't together, keeps raining all the time. Keeps raining all the time.
Irving Berlin was not a man to go to nightclubs. He was pretty much a homebody, had a very happy marriage. He was also an insomniac, and he usually wrote after midnight till 3 or 4 in the morning, and then he'd first go to bed. But he heard that his friend Harold Arlen, whom he called Herschel, had written this song, and he wanted to hear it. So he trooped up to the Cotton Club, and he listened to Ethel Waters sing Stormy Weather. As soon as the show ended, he went backstage and offered her a job on Broadway. This is the 1930s. The song with Stormy Weather was 1932. I never mentioned that, and I should have. He and Moss Hart, the playwright, were collaborating on a review to be called As Thousands Cheer. It's one of the major Broadway revues. Berlin would write the songs, the score, and Moss Hart would write the sketches. It was a fast-paced, urban, satirical revue. Berlin told Waters and her manager that he was going to write 3 songs for Ethel Waters for that show. 2 of them fit immediately. Heat Wave, she started the heat wave by letting her seat wave, and it was hot enough so eggs scrambled on the sidewalk, that sort of thing. And the other was called Harlem on My Mind. It portrays Josephine Baker, who was out to dinner with a marquis in Paris, and he's offering her diamonds and jewels and villas, and all she can think about is Harlem. Again, a New York song. The third song was somewhat different, a lot different. Berlin told her that he was going to, and the manager, he was going to write a serious song for her to sing. As Thousands Cheer built itself from newspaper headlines. The curtain would close and there'd be a headline on the curtain. Heat wave strikes New York. And when the curtain opened, Ethel Waters would sing Heat Wave, or whatever. She wasn't the only one in the cast. There was one that opened up and they sang a song called The Funnies, about the comic strips in the Sunday paper. One of them said, I can't remember the exact line, I'm sorry, something about lynching. Berlin had seen photographs of a lynching, and he was deeply shaken by them. And he determined to write an anti-lynching song for, again, a fast-paced, funny, satirical, urbane Broadway musical. Only someone with the clout of an Irving Berlin could have done that. The curtain opens for the second act on a sharecropper's shack somewhere in the South. Not what anybody is expecting. The woman played by Ethel Waters is a mother. Her children are in the room, maybe at the table, and she is preparing dinner when the word comes that her husband has been lynched. Now, you may know another song about lynching that's associated with Billie Holiday called Strange Fruit. That one works through metaphor. The strange fruit is the bodies of the victims hanging from the tree. But Berlin is writing for the theater, and so he creates a character and a situation, and tells part of their story through song. Strange Fruit was written almost a decade after Supper Time. It is our first great anti-lynching song. This is what Irving Berlin gave us after he heard Stormy Weather.
Supper time, I must set the table, 'cause it's supper time. Somehow I ain't able, 'cause that man of mine ain't coming home no more. supper time. Kids will soon be yelling for their supper time. How I keep from telling them that man of mine ain't coming home no more. How I keep explaining when they ask me where he's gone. How I keep from crying when I bring the supper on. How I can remind them to pray at their humble board. How can I be thankful when they start to thank the Lord? Oh Lord, supper time. I must set the table 'cause it's supper time. Somehow I ain't able 'cause that man of mine ain't coming home no more. 'Cause that man of mine ain't coming home no more.
The blues as a form of music, is not that old. What's strange about the blues, the word itself, is that it's singular. The blues is, and it hits our ears funny because it ends in an S. Anyway, the blues begin in the Mississippi Delta in the second half of the 19th century. It's not that old. It was an indigenous African-American folk music. But when blacks moved north during the Great Migration, they took their music with them, just as the people who came from elsewhere brought their music with them. The traditional blues in the north become the urban blues, irreverent, demanding, sexual, sometimes dangerous. In the 1920s, it became a national music. All the great blues singers of the 1920s were women. Ma Rainey, Gertrude Ma Rainey, the mother of the blues. Bessie Smith, the empress of the blues. Mamie Smith, Trixie Smith, Ida Cox. Young Ethel Waters started out singing the blues as called herself Young Mama Stringbean because she was skinny. The last of them, a woman I saw perform many times in her 80s, Alberta Hunter. Bessie, Mamie, and Trixie were all Smiths. They were not related, they just had a common last name. But I like to say that when the Smith brothers were making cough drops, the Smith sisters were singing the blues. Excuse me. The urban blues gave rise to another Harlem Renaissance staple, the double entendre songs. This is where the sexuality, and in its way, the defiance that comes into the blues in the North appears. This is not a song to sing in church. We are going to sing it in church. And so I need a little sugar in my bowl. I need a little hot dog on my roll. Do you have any more questions?
Madam Box was quite deluxe. Servants by the score, footmen at each door, butlers and maids galore. Then one day Dan, her kitchen man, gave in his notice he's through. She cried, "Oh damn, don't go. It'll grieve me if you do." I love his cabbage, crave his hash, daffy about his succotash. I can't do without my kitchen man. Wild about his turnip top, likes the way he warms my chop. I can't do without my kitchen man. Anybody else can leave, and I would only laugh, 'cause he means too much to me, and you ain't heard the half. His jelly roll is so nice and hot, never fails to touch the spot. I can't do without my kitchen man. His frankfurters are oh so sweet. How I like his sausage meat. I can't do without my kitchen man. Oh, that boy can open clams. No one else can touch my hams. I can't do without my kitchen man. When I eat his donuts, all I leave is the hole. Anytime he wants to, well, he can use my sugar bowl. Oh, his bologna is really worth a try. Never fails to satisfy. I can't do without my kitchen man. I can't do without my kitchen man.
Andy Razaf wrote the lyrics to a lot of double entendre songs. He hated writing them. You know why he did? Every one of them made him money. They were very popular at the time. I said before that the songs of the Harlem Renaissance are earthier and sexier than what Americans were used to. They were also reflections of life in Harlem. The sexuality, the drinking, the drugs, the food, the celebration and mockery of black life. These songs reflect the spirit of the Harlem Renaissance. They bury the hard times beneath the joy, exuberance, and their own kind of truth-telling. Minnie the Moocher and Your Feet's Too Big.
Hey folks, here's a story about Minnie the Moocher. She was a red hot hoochie coocher. She was a rough and tough and frail, but Minnie had a heart as big as a whale. Hidey, 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 hi. Hody, 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 ho. Heedy, 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 hee. She messed around with a bloke named Smokey. She loved him, though he was cokey. He took her down to the Chinatown, and he showed her how to kick the gong around. Hidey, 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 hi. Whoa. Heedy, 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 hee. Hidey, 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 hi. She had a dream about a king of Sweden. He gave her things that she was needing. He gave her a house built of gold and steel, a diamond car and platinum wheels. Howdy, 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 howdy. Howdy, 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 howdy. Skippity bip, skippity bip, skippity bip, skip bip. He gave her a townhouse and racing horses. Each meal she ate was a dozen courses. She had $1 million worth of nickels and dimes. She sat around and counted them 1,000,000 times. Hidey, 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 hi. Whoa! Oh, 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 oh. Poor man, poor man, poor, walking around here. Woo, mercy. Up in Harlem at a table for two. Never the four of us, baby. Me, your big feet, and you. From your ankles up, I say you sure are sweet. But then and down, baby, there's just too much feet. Oh, your feet's too big. Don't want you 'cause your feet's too big. Can't use you 'cause your feet's too big. I really hate you 'cause your feet's too big. Yeah. La, there was a yeah, nah, nah. Where'd you get 'em? Nah, 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 nah. Your girl, she likes you. She thinks you're nice. Says she got what it takes to take her to paradise. She likes your face and she likes your rig. But look at 'em, look at 'em. Your feet's too big. Oh, your feet's too big. Don't want you 'cause your feet's too big. Mad at you 'cause your feet's too big. I really hate you 'cause your feet's too big. Yeah. Your pelvic extremities are colossal. To me, you look just like a fossil. They got me walking talking and squawking, 'cause your feet's too big. Can't go nowhere with you, 'cause your feet's too big. Can't get in the bed next to you, 'cause your feet's too big. Look at them, look at them. They're spread all across the floor. When you up and die, ain't nobody gonna solve. The undertaker's gonna have quite a job. You gonna look funny with him laying in the casket. Look at them big feet sticking up out the basket. Oh, your feet's too big. Don't want you 'cause your feet's too big. Can't use you 'cause your feet's too big. I really hate you 'cause your feet's too big. Yeah, your feet's too big. Don't want you 'cause your feet's too big. Can't use you 'cause your feet's too big. I really hate you 'cause your feet's too big. Yeah. You know your pedal extremities are colossal. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Most of the African Americans who came north during the Great Migration were poor. There was by this time some money in Harlem, certainly some noted residents. And there was an area up in the northwest corner of Harlem known as Sugar Hill, where people like Duke Ellington and W.E.B. Du Bois lived. But the rest of the people, especially those who had been sharecroppers in the South, had to find a place to live in New York City. Now, it wasn't as bad then as it is now, but it wasn't easy. And they did settle in Harlem. But every month there was the same problem, paying the rent. They created an ingenious solution: rent parties. They would put up signs, small probably, in barber shops and beauty parlors, two of the social hubs of life in Harlem. They would not put them in church. They might put them in a neighborhood bar, but barber shops and beauty parlors spread the word. Still sign that so-and-so at such and such address was having a rent party on Saturday night, February whatever. And anybody was allowed, and everybody was invited. You came in, and there was a pot on a table at the door. And depending on what the card said, you would drop in a dime or a quarter, and there would be chitlins in the kitchen and bathtub hooch in the bathtub, and a piano player, and if you were really lucky, maybe you had Fats Waller or Earl Father Hines. And the bedrooms upstairs were for the trading of gossip as well as various bodily fluids. And there was dancing and raucousness and good times until the morning. And when all your new friends, old and new friends, left, you would probably have enough to pay the rent. Rent parties. Here are two rent party songs from the Harlem Renaissance.
25 cents? Ha! No, no. I wouldn't pay 25 cents to go nowhere. Now, listen here. Up in Harlem every Saturday night, when the highbrows get together, it's just too tight. They all congregate at an all-night strut, and what they do is tut Old Hannah Brown from across town gets full of corn and starts breaking them down. Just at the break of day, you can hear old Hannah say, give me a pig foot and a bottle of beer. Send me again, I don't care. I feel just like I want to clown. Give the piano player a drink because he's bringing me down. He's got a rhythm, yeah. When he stomps his feet, he sends me right off to sleep. Check all your razors and your gun. We're gonna be wrestling well when the wagon comes. I want a pig foot and a bottle of beer. Send me 'cause I just don't care. Slay me 'cause I just don't care. Well, how y'all doing? Did you pay your 25 cents? Okay. Come on, piano player, give me a pig foot and a bottle of beer. Send me again, I don't care. I feel just like I want to clown. Give the piano player a drink because he's bringing me down. He's got rhythm, yeah. When he stomps his feet, he sends me right off to sleep. Check all your razors and your gun. We go to shimmy till the morning come. Give me a reefer and a gang of gin. Play me 'cause I'm in my sin. Slay me 'cause I'm full of gin.
They have a new expression along old Harlem way that tells you when a party is 10 times more than gay. To say that things are jumping leaves not a single doubt that everything is in full swing when you hear somebody shout. Here it is.
Woo! The joint is jumping. It's really jumping. Come in, cats, and check your hats. That means the joint is jumping. The piano's thumping. The dancers are dumping. There's a spot, it's more than hot. In fact, the joint is jumping.
Check your weapons at the door. Be sure to pay your quarter.
Burn your leather on the floor. Joint anybody's doctor. The roof is rocking. The neighbors knocking. We're all bums when the wagon comes. I mean, the joint is jumping. The joint is jumping. It's really jumping.
Every Mose is on his toes. I mean, the joint is jumping. No time for talking. This place is walking, yeah. Grab a jug and cut the rug. I think the joint is jumping.
Get your pig feet, beer and gin. There's plenty in the kitchen.
Who's that just came in? Oh, just look at how he's switching. Oh, mercy.
Don't mind the hour, 'cause I'm in power. I got bail if we go to jail. I mean, the joint is jumping. The joint is jumping. It's really jumping. We're all bums when the wagon comes. I mean, the joint is jumping. We're all bums when the wagon comes. I mean, the joint is jumping.
We're hey, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Let us do one more for you. But you have to sit down so we can. I'm good. I just have to find a where you are. Thank you. For this song, please. Andy Razaf, again Andy Razaf, who wrote the lyrics to Kitchen Man and a song that Alberta Hunter used to sing, My Handyman Ain't Handy No More. In this double entendre song, he made the imagery a little less direct to make it palatable for broader audiences. In fact, unless you're listening, you really don't know it's a double entendre song. You just think it's a friendly love song. But listen, don't buy sugar, you just have to touch my cup. You're my sugar, it's sweet when you stir it up. That gets lost. Many of us still recognize this song as well as some other songs from the Harlem Renaissance, although I hope you did hear some songs you didn't know before you came today. When we hear their titles, we lean in anticipation. This is one of those songs. These songs are still out there, still in the air, still possessing the ebullience that a century ago helped to define what it meant to be an American.
Have no use for other sweets of any kind since the day you came around. From the start, I instantly made up my mind. Sweeter sweetness can't be found. You're so sweet, can't be beat. Nothing sweeter ever stood on feet. Every honeybee fills with jealousy when they see you out with me. I don't blame them, goodness knows. Honey, oh, sucker rose.
When you're passing by,
Yeah.
flowers droop inside. And I know the reason why.
Why?
You're much sweeter, goodness knows. Honeysuckle rose. Don't buy sugar. You just have to touch my cup. You're my sugar.
So sweeter when you stir it up.
When I'm taking sips from your tasty lips, seems the honey fairly drips. Your confection, goodness knows. Honeysuckle rose. Don't buy sugar. You just have to touch
Yeah,
my
yeah.
cup. You're my sugar.
So sweeter when you stir it up.
When I'm taking sips from your tasty lips, seems the honey fairly drips. Your confection, goodness knows. Honeysuckle rose. Your confection, goodness knows. Honeysuckle rose. Your confection, goodness knows.
Yeah.
Honeysuckle rose.
Yeah. Lord
Hey.
have mercy.
Thank you. Thank you. We're standing for those things. Thank you. I wonder who was back there. Back in the bus.